Hi, I'm Paul Edwards, author of the Mourners Woods books, and first and foremost, a monster kid. Tonight, I'm watching Howling V, The Rebirth from 1989. The Howling franchise is a set of werewolf stories in both printed and movie format that are not interconnected. The Howling stories are individual standalone werewolf stories. So it doesn't matter which order you see the Howling movies in, because one movie really has nothing to do with the others. So don't be put off by the fact that this movie is called Howling V. You don't have to have seen Howlings 1 through 4 to understand any part of this movie. And I can relate to this because my own franchise, Mourners Woods, I run the exact same way. Each installment is its own complete standalone story. You don't have to have read one Mourners Woods book to understand another. So I can relate to that. Unfortunately, I haven't been crazy about a lot of the movies in the Howling franchise. They have a sort of a sense of humor to them that I just don't get. But I really like this particular film. Howling V is a story of visitors to a castle in Budapest, where 500 years ago, the royal family that lived there committed a massacre of their own line to stop their lineage, to stop anyone from descending from their line. And history has no record of why they did this. But now, in the present day, 1989, a group of tourists from all walks of life have been selected to come and join in the grand opening of this castle, supposedly as a new tourist attraction. The cast of characters assembles in the castle, and a raging blizzard strikes, which traps them in the castle together. So they have to stay the night, which they hadn't planned to do. And soon, their numbers start to diminish as one by one people go missing. And it becomes clear that one of these people is a werewolf and is killing off the others, a la Agatha Christie, and then there were none. But we have no idea who the werewolf is, and that's the fun of the movie, is that we're trying to solve the mystery of who the werewolf is. Now, of course, I will not spoil the film for you if you haven't seen it by telling you who the werewolf is. I will tell you that I did not get it my first time seeing the movie. I had someone else in mind. But once I saw who the person was, it made me want to go back and see the movie again so that I could understand certain things that were said and done, in the light of knowing who the real werewolf was. One thing you have to be aware of in this film is that the werewolf is not a typical Hollywood werewolf. Hollywood has invented a lot of what we think is werewolf lore. For example, the idea that moonlight turns the victim into a werewolf, that was invented by a 1935 film, Werewolf of London. Or the idea that you specifically had to have a full moon in order to transform into a werewolf. That was invented in the film Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman in 1943. Neither of those were ever part of werewolf lore. Also, the idea that a werewolf would black out during his transformation. His human self would not remember anything that he did in wolf form when he returned to human form and woke up the next morning. That's completely an invention of Hollywood. That came from The Wolfman in 1941. None of those things were part of werewolf lore. If you ever actually read werewolf lore, you'll know that a werewolf in folklore was a person who practiced witchcraft and was able to transform themselves into a wolf and back again at will. they could come and go as they please from human form to monster form. So the werewolf in this film is actually much more like a folklore werewolf than what we're used to seeing in Hollywood films. This is a person who can change back and forth at will. So the person may well be in monster form and killing the next victim, and then 5 minutes later be walking through the hallway of the castle and running into other characters and saying, "Oh, did you hear that? What was that strange sound?" And of course, you know, this is a new angle on the traditional and then there were none setup, where a werewolf is knocking off the victims, and we have to guess the identity of the killer. But, you know, it's a monster killer, not just a human killer. I really like Howling 5. There's a lot good in this movie. Unfortunately, something that is not great in this movie is the acting. The acting is actually pretty poor. There are one or two characters who I think are well acted. The character of David, I think, is well acted. The character of Mary Lou, I think, is well acted. But a whole lot of the actors are really either phoning it in, or their performances just don't come across as convincing. And it's a shame, because it's really pretty well written. And normally the opposite problem is true in low budget horror movies. A lot of times you'll find that the story is kind of thrown together haphazardly, but at least the actors are professional enough to sell it and make it look as convincing as they can. This is the opposite of that. It's a shame, but it's not all that well acted. But everything else in the movie is going for it. It's well written. There are some clever things in the script, and the setup is great. They do a great job of isolating the protagonists in this castle. And of course, it's no surprise to anyone seeing a movie like this that it's not a coincidence who these specific people are that have wound up at the castle. There's a reason why each of these specific people is there, and it has to do with the massacre that happened 500 years ago. So this is my favorite film in the Howling franchise, and one of the better werewolf films of the 1980s, I think. Listen, if you enjoy classic monsters and vintage horror, check out my book series, the Mourners Woods books. I'm self-published on Amazon. I write a series of novels that take place in a haunted forest, and each book has a completely new cast of characters and different monsters. What they have in common is the location, Mourners Woods. My name again is Paul Edwards. My books are the Mourners Woods books, for sale on Amazon. Thanks for letting me talk to you about the Howling 5, the Rebirth. I'll see you in Mourners Woods.